She was cast out for marrying an Apache, but his clan built her a home with their own hands. The desert wind carried dust and whispers through the streets of Tucson as Margaret Sullivan stood on her family's porch for the last time. Her father's weathered hands trembled as he held the doorframe, his knuckles white against the painted wood. Behind him, her mother sat at the kitchen table, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "You made your choice, Margaret." Thomas Sullivan's voice cracked despite his attempt at firmness. That savage ain't welcome in this house, and neither are you if you're fool enough to marry him." Margaret clutched her carpet bag tighter, feeling the weight of her few possessions and the small Bible her grandmother had given her. At 23, she had never imagined leaving home this way, but the love she felt for Nalnish had grown beyond her ability to deny or hide. She had met him 6 months ago when he came to town to trade horses with her father's business partner. Unlike the other Apache men who conducted their business quickly and left, Nalnish had lingered, asking questions about her family's cattle operation in careful, measured English. "His name is Nalnish," she said quietly, meeting her father's blue eyes she had inherited. "And he's a good man, Papa. You know he is. You've done business with his people for years." Thomas turned away, unable to look at his only daughter. "Business is one thing, family is another. What will the neighbors think? What will the church say? You're throwing away everything we've built here for some Apache buck who'll probably leave you in the desert when he tires of you." The words stung because Margaret had heard them whispered by others in town since word of her courtship had spread. But she had also seen the way Nalnish looked at her, the way he listened to her thoughts about books and music, the way he spoke of his family with deep respect and love. She had learned enough Apache phrases to understand when his grandmother called her daughter during their brief meetings at the trading post. "He won't leave me," Margaret said, stepping off the porch. "His family has already accepted me. They're building us a home near the winter camp." Her mother finally looked up, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "Margaret, please stay. End this foolishness before it's too late. We can find you a good husband." "I've found one, Mama." Margaret's voice broke slightly. "I love him and he loves me. Why can't that be enough?" Thomas slammed his hand against the doorframe. "Because love doesn't put food on the table or protect you from the elements. Because that life will kill you, girl. Mark my words. You'll come crawling back within a year and we won't be here to pick up the pieces." Margaret stood in the dusty street, watching her childhood home grow smaller in the fading light. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, some with pity, others with disgust. Mrs. Henderson from the general store crossed herself as Margaret passed, muttering prayers for her soul. At the edge of town, where the desert began its endless stretch, toward the mountains, Nalnish waited with 2 horses. His dark eyes found hers immediately, and she saw the pain there, pain that matched her own. He had heard every cruel word the townspeople had spoken about him, about their union, about what they believed would become of her. "Are you certain?" he asked in English, though they often spoke in a mixture of languages now. Margaret looked back once more at the lights of Tucson, then at the man who had become her future. "I'm certain." The desert stretched endlessly before them as they rode toward the Chiricahua Mountains, the horses' hooves creating a steady rhythm against the packed earth. Margaret had never traveled this far from town, and the vastness both terrified and exhilarated her. Nalnish rode slightly ahead, his body moving in perfect harmony with his horse, occasionally pointing out landmarks or signs that were invisible. To her untrained eyes, "See those tracks?" he asked, dismounting near a cluster of creosote bushes. "Javelina. They came through here yesterday morning after the rain." He knelt, touching the earth with reverence that Margaret was beginning to understand characterized everything about his relationship with the land. Margaret climbed down from her horse, her legs already aching from the unfamiliar saddle. "How can you tell it was yesterday morning?" "The edges of the prints are still sharp, but dust has begun to settle in the deepest parts. And see how the plant stems are bent? They spring back slowly after being disturbed." He stood, brushing his hands on his leather leggings. "My grandfather taught me to read the land like your people read books. They continued riding as the sun climbed higher, the heat becoming oppressive even in early spring. Margaret's fair skin began to burn despite the wide-brimmed hat she wore, and she felt sweat trickling down her back beneath her heavy cotton dress. She had packed practical clothes, but nothing truly suited for desert travel. "We'll rest at the next water source," Nalnish said, noticing her discomfort. "There's a spring about 2 miles ahead, where my people have camped for generations." When they reached the spring, Margaret was amazed to find a small oasis tucked between red rock formations. Clear water bubbled up from underground, creating a pool surrounded by cottonwood trees and thick grass. Ancient pictographs decorated the rock walls, telling stories in symbols she couldn't decipher. "This place is sacred," Nalnish explained as they let the horses drink. "My great-grandmother used to bring her children here during the hot months. She said the spirits keep the water pure for those who respect the land." Margaret knelt by the spring, cupping the cool water in her hands and drinking deeply. It tasted sweeter than any water she had known. "It's beautiful. I can understand why your people would consider it sacred. Your people too, now," Nalnish said softly. "When we marry according to Apache tradition, you become part of the clan. My grandmother, my aunts, my cousins, they will all be your family." The weight of this struck Margaret suddenly. She was not just marrying Nalnish, she was joining an entire community with its own customs, language, and expectations. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "What if they don't truly accept me? What if I can't learn your ways properly?" Nalnish sat beside her on a fallen log, taking her hand in his calloused ones. "My grandmother has already chosen the place for our home. She would not do this for someone she did not consider family. And my cousin Desba has been preparing materials to teach you basket weaving, hide tanning, and plant medicine. They see your heart, Margaret. They know you come to us not as someone trying to change us, but as someone wanting to learn and belong." That evening, as they made camp under a canopy of stars brighter than any Margaret had ever seen in town, Nalnish taught her to build a proper fire for cooking and warmth. His patience was infinite as she struggled with the unfamiliar techniques, never showing frustration when she failed to arrange the kindling correctly, or when she nearly extinguished the flames with too much wood. "Among my people," he said as they shared a simple meal of dried meat and wild plants he had gathered, "teaching is considered one of the highest honors. When someone learns our ways, our traditions continue. You are not taking from us, you're helping us grow stronger." Margaret looked up at the vast sky, feeling smaller and larger at the same time. Tomorrow they would reach his family's camp, and her new life would truly begin. Tonight, sitting by the fire with the man she loved, listening to coyotes sing in the distance, she felt more at peace than she had in months. The Apache camp appeared gradually as they crested a small rise, blending so naturally with the landscape that Margaret almost missed it at first. Wickiups made of brush and hide dotted a meadow near a seasonal creek, their dome shapes echoing the surrounding hills. Smoke rose from several cooking fires, and she could see women working with various crafts while children played nearby. The scene was both foreign and somehow familiar. Families going about their daily lives much as they did anywhere. An elderly woman emerged from the largest wickiup as they approached, her silver hair braided with strips of red cloth. Her face was deeply lined, but her eyes were sharp and kind. Margaret knew immediately this was Nalnish's grandmother, the matriarch who would determine her place in the community. "Shima sa ni," Nalnish said, dismounting and embracing the old woman with obvious affection. They spoke rapidly in Apache, and Margaret caught a few words she had learned. Her name, references to the journey, and what sounded like questions about her well-being. The grandmother approached Margaret's horse, reaching up to help her dismount with surprising strength for someone her age. Up close, Margaret could see the intricate beadwork on her dress and the silver jewelry at her throat and wrists, clearly pieces of great value and significance. "I am called Maria by the white traders," the old woman said in careful English. "But my real name is Nazba. It means she who returns. You may call me grandmother, as Nalnish does." Her weathered hands took Margaret's face gently, studying her features with the intensity of someone reading a map. "Yes, I see it. You have the spirit of one who belongs to the earth, not just to the settlements." Other family members gathered around, aunts, uncles, cousins, and children, whose curious eyes took in every detail of Margaret's appearance and clothing. A young woman about Margaret's age stepped forward, her smile warm and welcoming. "I am Desba," she said in English nearly as fluent as Nalnish's. "I am Nalnish's cousin, and I will be your sister now. Come, you must be tired and thirsty." Margaret was led to a shaded area, where several women sat working on various crafts. They made room for her on a woven mat, offering her water from a beautifully crafted clay vessel and food from communal bowls. The women spoke among themselves in Apache, occasionally including words of English for Margaret's benefit. She sensed they were discussing her, but the tone was curious rather than hostile. "They are planning the ceremony," Desba explained quietly. "Apache weddings are not like white ceremonies. The families must prepare for 4 days, and there are many rituals to ensure the marriage will be blessed with happiness and children." An older man approached their group, Nyalnish's uncle, who served as a leader in the band. His presence commanded immediate respect, and Margaret stood instinctively as he addressed her. "You have chosen to join our people," he said in English, his voice carrying the weight of ceremony. "This is not a choice made lightly. You will learn our ways, speak our language, and raise your children to know both worlds. Are you prepared for this responsibility?" Margaret felt the weight of every eye upon her. This was the moment that would determine her future, not just with Nalnish, but with the entire community that would become her family. "I am prepared," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I want to learn. I want to belong. I know I have much to understand, but I come with respect and an open heart." The uncle nodded slowly, then spoke to the gathering in Apache. Margaret heard murmurs of approval from the crowd, and Nazba reached over to squeeze her hand. "He has given his blessing," Desba whispered. "The wedding preparations will begin tomorrow." That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Margaret sat with the women around a large fire. They shared stories, some in English for her benefit, others translated by Desba. She learned about the history of the land, the seasonal patterns that governed their lives, and the intricate relationships between families and clans that formed the backbone of Apache society. When Nalnish joined the circle later, bringing his guitar, a skill he had learned during his time in town, the atmosphere became festive. He played familiar melodies while the Apache added their own traditional songs, creating a unique blend that seemed to symbolize the cultural bridge they were all crossing together. Margaret looked around the fire at faces that were becoming dear to her, listening to laughter that included her own, and felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't experienced since leaving her parents' home. This was belonging, not the kind based on shared blood or familiar surroundings, but the deeper kind built on choice, acceptance, and love. The sound of axes and voices woke Margaret before dawn on her wedding day. Through the entrance of the Yao Wikiup she shared with Desba and 2 other unmarried women, she could see the entire camp in motion. Men were cutting and shaping wood while women prepared materials for construction. What she witnessed made her catch her breath. The entire community was building her and Nalnish's home. "This is our way," Nazba explained as she helped Margaret dress in the traditional wedding clothes the women had spent 4 days preparing. The dress was made of soft doe skin, decorated with intricate beadwork and patterns that told the story of her acceptance into the clan. When 2 people marry, they do not face the world alone. The whole community gives them a foundation. Margaret watched through the doorway as Nalnish worked alongside his male relatives, his shirt already soaked with sweat in the early morning heat. The frame of their future home was taking shape with remarkable speed, not a wiki-up like the temporary shelters used for seasonal camps, but a more permanent structure that blended Apache building techniques with some elements that would make Margaret feel at home. "See how they position it?" Desba pointed to the construction. "The doorway faces east to welcome each new day. The walls are thick enough to stay cool in summer and warm in winter. And there, they are building a separate space where you can have a table and chairs like white women use, and shelves for your books. The thoughtfulness of this gesture brought tears to Margaret's eyes. She had mentioned her love of reading only in passing, but Nalnish's family had remembered and incorporated this detail into their home's design. As the morning progressed, the wedding ceremony began with traditional Apache rituals that Margaret had practiced under Nazba's patient guidance. She and Nalnish stood before the community. As the sun reached its peak, their hands joined while the elders spoke blessings in Apache and English. The ceremony was simple but profound, focused on the couple's commitment not just to each other, but to the community that would support them and the children they might have. "You are now husband and wife in the eyes of our people and the Creator," the elder announced. "Your home will be a bridge between worlds, and your children will carry the best of both traditions." The celebration that followed lasted until well after sunset, with traditional Apache foods alongside dishes Margaret had taught the women to prepare. Music filled the air, drums and flutes mixing with Nalnish's guitar and songs that blended English and Apache lyrics. Children ran between the adults, their laughter adding to the joyful chaos. As the evening wound down, Margaret and Nalnish were finally able to approach their completed home. The community had not only built the structure, but had furnished it with everything a new household would need: cooking pots, blankets, tools, and even a small shelf holding books that various family members had acquired from trading posts over the years. "This is how we ensure no one starts their married life with nothing," Nalnish explained, as they stood in the doorway of their new home. "Every family contributes something, so the new couple begins with the strength of the whole community behind them." Margaret ran her fingers along the smooth wooden walls, amazed by the craftsmanship and the love that had gone into every detail. In one corner, she found a rocking chair that had clearly been crafted specifically for her. The style reminiscent of furniture from her childhood, but made with Apache techniques and materials. Over the following weeks, Margaret settled into her new life with surprising ease. The women of the camp continued her education in traditional skills, teaching her to weave baskets so tight they could hold water, to identify and prepare medicinal plants, and to read weather patterns in cloud formations and animal behavior. In return, she shared her knowledge of reading and writing, helping some of the younger people improve their English and teaching basic mathematics that proved useful in trading. The cultural exchange went both ways. Margaret learned that her new family's understanding of the natural world was far more sophisticated than anything she had encountered in town. Their knowledge of plant medicine, seasonal cycles, and sustainable living practices represented generations of accumulated wisdom. Most importantly, she discovered that love could indeed be enough, not the naive romantic love her father had dismissed, but love backed by community support, mutual respect, and shared commitment to building something meaningful together. Her marriage to Nalnish had not been a sacrifice or a loss, but a transformation that had revealed strengths and possibilities she never knew she possessed. Standing in the doorway of their home one evening, watching Nalnish work with his cousins to repair another family's shelter, Margaret thought about her parents and the neighbors who had expected her to fail. She had not crawled back as her father predicted. Instead, she had found a place where her worth was not measured by others' expectations, but by her contributions to a community that had chosen to embrace her completely. The desert wind that had once carried whispers of judgment now brought the sounds of her new family, children calling her aunt, women seeking her advice on written contracts with traders, and Nalnish's voice calling her home for the evening meal. She had been cast out for love, but that same love had led her to a home built not just by hands, but by hearts that had opened to welcome her completely.